Your worst nightmare knocks on your door. It's the neighborhood boss trying to bust into your secret spot all because you said no. But guess what? I turned the tables and caught them red-handed. Stick around, 'cause this tale's got bikes bad, guys blue dust, and a big win for the good guys. I recently faced my own worst nightmare. The HOA called the cops to try and enter my garage all because I wouldn't hand over the key. And their reason? They said I was hiding hazardous materials in my garage. Funny thing is, the only crime I was guilty of was catching their break-in on camera and pressing play for the whole neighborhood. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Ben Carter. I'm a Finnish carpenter. That means I like things to be right. I like corners to be square, lines to be plumb, and joints to be tight. I like quiet. For a long time, I didn't have it. So when I finally saved up enough to buy a house, I picked a place called Meadow Ridge Estates. It sounded quiet. It had neat little lawns and houses that all looked like they came out of the same box, just in different colors. Mine was gray. It had a 2-car garage, which was the real selling point. A man needs a garage. It's a workshop, a sanctuary, a place to think. Inside my garage, I had 2 things that mattered a lot to me. The first was a 1968 Triumph Bonneville Candy Apple Blue. It was my grandpa's. He left it to me when he passed, and it was more than just a motorcycle. It was a piece of him, a promise I made to keep it running. The second thing was new. It was a safe, a big one, about 4 feet tall, heavy as a dead elephant. I bought it blind at a storage auction. I'm a sucker for a mystery box, and this was the biggest one I'd ever seen. It took 4 of us to get it off the truck and onto a heavy-duty dolly in the corner of my garage. We used a pallet jack and steel rollers to ease it down the ramps without cracking the slab. I hadn't gotten around to opening it yet. I figured I'd get to it when I got to it. For now, it was just a big gray metal box holding a secret. My secret in my garage. It was perfect for about a week. Then came the letter. It was from the Homeowners Association, the HOA. It was an invitation to a mandatory meeting. I'd met the HOA president once. Her name was Karen Moore. She had that look, the one that says she knows what's best for you, and you're going to like it or else. The meeting was in the community clubhouse. It smelled like stale coffee and quiet desperation. Karen stood at the front smiling, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She filibustered about curb appeal until everyone's souls tried to escape through the exit sign. Karen had a clipboard full of fines and a smile. You'd need a hazmat suit to handle. She called it community like a pickpocket calling it wealth redistribution. Then she dropped the bomb, a new community safety initiative. She said that for emergency access, the HOA would now require a key to every homeowner's garage and any storage outbuilding. The room got very quiet. People looked at each other, then at their shoes. Nobody wants to be the first one to say no to a woman like Karen. But I'm a carpenter. I build things, I build doors, and I put locks on them for a reason. So I raised my hand. She pointed at me, her smile tightening. Yes, Mr. Carter. Yeah, I'm not doing that, I said. The room got even quieter. Excuse me, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. My garage is my property, I said, keeping my voice calm and even. It's attached to my house, it's full of my tools, my personal stuff. You're not getting a key. She stared at me. I could see the gears turning in her head. She wasn't used to people saying no. It's a mandatory safety rule, Mr. Carter, for the fire department in case of an emergency. The fire department has axes, I said. They'll get in faster that way. A few people coughed to hide a laugh. Karen's face went from pale to pink. Her boyfriend, a guy named Brandon Cole, who always looked like he was trying to sell you a watch he found on the bus, stood up beside her. He was her muscle, I guess. It's for everyone's protection, he said, puffing out his chest. I just looked at him. No thanks. I'll protect myself. Karen took a deep breath, collecting herself. She put the fake smile back on. Very well, Mr. Carter. Refusal to comply will result in fines, and I must warn you, We've had reports of unapproved structures being stored in garages. If we have reason to believe there's a violation, we will take action. If you try to open that garage door without a compliance officer present, we will consider it an attempt to hide a violation and we will call 911. She looked right at me. It wasn't a general announcement anymore. It was a threat delivered in front of 50 of my new neighbors. A threat over a garage door, over a key. I looked back at her, gave a little nod and walked out of the meeting. I knew this wasn't about a key. It wasn't about safety. It was about control. She wanted to own every piece of this neighborhood, right down to the dust bunnies in my garage. I got home and stood in my driveway looking at the big closed door. Inside was my grandpa's bike, my mystery safe, my space. And she thought she could threaten me for it. She thought a phone call to the police would make me fold. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I had work to do on that bike. The carburetors needed tuning and I was going to do it tomorrow. That meant I was going to open my garage door, and if she wanted to call 911, well, she could go right ahead. This was my home, my castle, and she had just declared war on it. The next day was a Saturday. The sun was out, the birds were singing, and a notice was taped to my garage door. It was a fine, $50 for failure to comply with HOA Mandate 7.4 emergency access. Below the fine was a handwritten note. This is your only warning. I peeled it off, crumpled it up, and tossed it in the recycling bin. A warning? I'm a grown man. I own this place. The bank and I. Anyway, a warning from the queen of the cul-de-sac didn't mean much to me. I had a plan for the day. My grandpa's Triumph wasn't just a machine. It was a memory. I remember sitting on the tank as a little kid while he polished the chrome, the smell of wax and gasoline filling his dusty garage. He taught me how to hold a wrench. He taught me that if you take care of your tools, they'll take care of you. He also taught me that you don't let a bully push you around no matter how big they are or how important they think they are. A man's got a right to his own space, Benny. He'd say, don't ever let anyone take that from you. So this wasn't just about a garage door, it was about that promise. I grabbed the remote, pointed it at the door and pushed the button. The door groaned, shuddered, and then rolled up, flooding the garage with sunlight. It felt good. It felt right. I stood there for a moment, just breathing in the free air. I could feel eyes on me. I glanced across the street. Sure enough, there was Karen Moore, standing on her porch, phone pressed to her ear, a smug, triumphant look on her face. She gave me a little wave, the kind of wave a queen gives to a peasant she's about to have thrown in the dungeon. She dialed with my garage door wide open, exactly like she'd threatened in the meeting. I just smiled and waved back, let her call. I had nothing to hide. I rolled the Bonneville out onto the driveway, the blue paint sparkling in the sun. I got my tools out, laid them on a clean rag, and got to work. About 20 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up to the curb. A sergeant got out. He was a big guy, calm, with a face that said he'd seen it all and wasn't impressed by much of it. His name tag read, Deeks. Karen came marching across the street, Brandon trailing behind her like a loyal puppy. Thank you for coming, officer, she said, her voice filled with drama. This man, Mr. Carter, is in violation of our community safety rules. He was explicitly told not to open this garage. We have reason to believe he's storing hazardous materials. Sergeant Deeks looked at me. He looked at the open toolbox. He looked back at her. Ma'am, what hazardous materials are we talking about? We don't know, she said, as if that was the whole point. That's why we need access. He refuses to comply. He's hiding something. I stayed quiet. Let her dig her own hole. I just wiped a bit of grease off my hands with a rag. Deeks walked over to me. This, your house, sir? He asked. Yes, Sergeant, I said. I walked inside, came back out with the deed. This your motorcycle? Yes, Sergeant. I handed him the title and my registration. He looked them over. He was thorough. He handed them back. Everything seems to be in order. He turned to Karen. Ma'am, this is a civil dispute between you and your homeowners association. It Is not a police matter. He owns the property. He can open his garage, but the rules, she sputtered. The rules don't override the law, Deke said, his voice flat. And right now, you're asking me to enforce your neighborhood rules, which I can't do. What I can do is give you a warning about misusing the 911 system. This is not an emergency. Do not call us again unless there is a real one. Karen's face was a picture. The smugness was gone, replaced by pure, uncut fury. She was being told no by someone with actual authority, and she couldn't stand it. Brandon started to say something, but Deeks gave him a look that shut him up instantly. "Have a good day, Mr. Carter," the sergeant said to me, giving a nod. "You too, Sergeant." "Thanks." He got back in his car and drove away. Karen stood there frozen on the sidewalk. She looked at me, and if looks could kill, I'd be a pile of ash on my own driveway. I just smiled, picked up a screwdriver, and went back to work on my grandpa's bike. A white golf cart with HOA livery whined to a stop at my curb. A man in a reflective vest climbed out like he was about to direct air traffic. His badge read, "Todd Compliance." Brandon lurked a step behind, arms crossed, jaw bravely clenched from a safe distance. "Afternoon, Mr. Carter," Todd said, clipboard up like a shield. "Random safety inspection. Garage access required under the initiative." "Random," I said, looking past him to where Karen watched from her porch like a snake at a mouse parade. "Sure. You got a warrant?" "We don't need one," Todd said. "The board isn't a court," I said, "and this isn't common property, that's my door." Brandon tried on his tough guy voice. "We can fine you every day." I pointed to the no trespassing sign and then to the driveway across the street. Paul Kim stood there sipping coffee from a mug the size of a soup pot. He raised it in a friendly way that somehow felt like artillery. Todd swallowed. "At minimum, I need to visually confirm no dangerous equipment is operating without supervision." "Visually. Confirm this," I said, and hit the starter. The Triumph barked to life and settled into a calm, even idle supervised. The sound must have tickled something territorial in Karen because she marched halfway down her steps and shouted, "Document his non-compliance, Todd." Todd flipped to a fresh page, pen hovering. "Sir, if you refuse entry, I am obligated to note the refusal," I said. "And also note, I asked you for a warrant and 2 cups of coffee. You brought neither." Paul coughed. It sounded like a laugh trying to wear a fake mustache. Brandon muttered, "Let's just go and tug Todd's sleeve." The clipboard closed with a sad little click. The golf cart whined away. I went back to the screwdriver. The idle stayed perfect. So did my mood. The first round was over. I had won. But I knew, looking at the hatred in her eyes, that this was just the beginning. She wasn't going to fight me with rules and fines anymore. She'd been embarrassed, and a person like Karen can't let that stand. I had a feeling her next move would be a lot dirtier. I finished tuning the carbs, the engine settling into a perfect rhythmic idle. But as the sun went down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. That night, I learned I was right. That night, I went to bed feeling good. I'd stood my ground, and the law had backed me up. I figured Karen would lick her wounds and maybe move on to bothering someone else about the color of their mailbox. I was wrong. Around 2 in the morning, a sound woke me up. It was a high-pitched whining noise like a dentist drill but deeper. It was coming from the direction of the garage. My first thought was that a raccoon was trying to chew its way into the trash. But this was a metallic sound. A grinding. I sat up in bed, my heart starting to thump a little faster. I'm a calm guy, but I don't like strange noises in the middle of the night. I have a small security camera system, nothing fancy, just a couple of cheap cameras I'd set up, one pointing at the driveway and one inside the garage. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and pulled up the feed. The driveway was empty, but the garage camera, my blood went cold. 2 figures were inside my garage. They'd pried open the small side door. One was a big guy I didn't recognize. The other was Brandon, Karen's boyfriend. The big guy was holding a heavy-duty drill, pressing it against the face of my auction safe. Sparks were flying. They We're trying to drill the lock. Anger hit me like a physical blow. This was my home, my space, and they were in it trying to steal from me. My first instinct was to grab the heaviest thing I could find and go out there and handle it myself. But my grandpa's other piece of advice echoed in my head. Never start a fight, Benny, but always be ready to finish it. And if you can, be smarter than the other guy. A brawl in the dark with two guys. That was a bad idea. Calling the cops was a good idea. But I wanted more. I wanted proof. I wanted to catch them red-handed in a way they couldn't deny. And I had a little surprise ready for just such an occasion. When I first moved in, I noticed the sprinkler system had a few heads right near the garage, side door, and the front porch. Being a guy who likes to tinker, I'd made a little modification. I'd installed a separate valve I could trigger remotely from my phone. And in the line leading to those specific sprinkler heads, I had installed a simple filter chamber. Inside that chamber, blue chalk line dust, the kind you use to snap straight lines on a job site. It's messy. It stains everything for a few hours, but it's completely harmless. It was my silent, stupid little burglar alarm. I hit record on my phone screen, making sure I was capturing the video feed from the garage camera. Then I switched to the app that controlled the sprinklers. I selected the porch surprise zone, and I hit on. For a second, nothing happened. Then on my camera feed, I saw the side door to the garage swing open. The big guy and Brandon came stumbling out, coughing. The heads by the side door and porch fired in sync. A bright blue chalk slurry under pressure, hitting them full in the face. They yelped, staggering back, completely blinded and covered head to toe in an impossible-to-miss layer of Smurf blue powder. They looked like two idiots who had lost a fight with a paint factory. They slipped and slid on the now damp porch, bumping into each other. Brandon fell right on his backside. It would have been hilarious if they hadn't just broken into my house. Lights started coming on in the neighboring houses. My neighbor across the street, Paul Kim, opened his front door. He just stood there staring at the two blue men flailing around on my porch. Brandon and his buddies scrambled to their feet and ran, leaving a faint trail of blue dust down the sidewalk as they disappeared into the dark. I stopped the recording on my phone. I had it all. Clear video of them inside my garage trying to drill my safe, followed by the glorious finale of them getting blasted with chalk dust. They weren't just criminals, they were idiots, and I had the proof. I sat there in the dark watching the video again. The anger was still there, but it was a cold anger now. A calm, focused anger. This wasn't about a key or a squabble anymore. They had crossed a line, a big one. They had broken into my home, and now I was going to use their stupidity to tear down everything Karen Moore had built. The game had changed, and I had the measurements and the blueprint. The next morning, I didn't bother cleaning up the blue dust on the porch. I left it there as a monument to their stupidity. I made a cup of coffee, sat down at my kitchen table, and transferred the video file from my phone to a laptop. I watched it again. The evidence was perfect. You could see Brandon's face clearly. You could see them trying to break into the safe. You could see them getting what they deserved. My first call wasn't to 911, it was a direct call to Sergeant Deke's desk at the precinct. I left a message. Sergeant, this is Ben Carter from Meadow Ridge. We spoke yesterday. There was another incident last night, a more serious one. I have video evidence of a breaking and entering, and an attempt to break into that safe we talked about. I think you're going to want to see it. An hour later, Deeks called back. His voice was all business. Mr. Carter, I'm on my way. When he arrived, I didn't have him stand on the porch. I invited him in, poured him a cup of coffee, and had the laptop open on the table. Before I show you this, I said, I want to be clear. I don't know what's in that safe. I bought it at a storage auction. For all I know, it's full of old newspapers, but Karen Moore and her boyfriend, Brandon Cole, seem to think it's worth breaking the law over. Deeks nodded slowly. Show me. I hit play. He watched the whole thing without a word. He saw them pry the door. He saw the sparks from the drill. He saw their faces, and he saw the blue chalk cloud. When it was over, he let out a long, slow breath. A tiny smile played on his lips for a second. Chalk dust? He asked. Harmless, I said. but effective, and it makes for a good visual. That it does, he said, his face serious again. That's Brandon Cole, the HOA president's boyfriend, and that's a clear criminal act. Attempted burglary and fraud. He looked at the safe in the garage, then back at me. Here's the situation, Mr. Carter. They are obsessed with this safe. You're in the middle of it. The best way to resolve this and to figure out what's really going on is to see what's inside it. I agree, I said, but I'm not a criminal. I'm not going to have my property seized and cracked open like I did something wrong. You won't, Deke said. I'm going to a judge for a search warrant to open the safe, executed with you present. It'll be supervised. And by the book, it protects you and it lets us get to the bottom of this. Are you okay with that? This was the moment. The mystery of the safe was about to be solved. Part of me was excited, part of me was nervous, but mostly I was determined. This was the path to ending Karen's reign. I'm okay with that, I said. Let's do it. It took a few hours. Deeks came back with the warrant and a police-approved locksmith. It felt strange standing in my own garage watching a stranger work on my property under the watchful eye of the law. But it felt right. The locksmith was good. No drilling this time. He worked on the dial, listening, feeling. It was a delicate process. After about 45 minutes, there was a loud, satisfying clunk. The handle turned. The massive door swung open. We all leaned in. Both officers tapped their body cams. We stood inside my garage with lights aimed into the safe. It wasn't full of old newspapers. The top shelf had stacks of cash, bundles of hundreds and fifties neatly wrapped. It looked like a lot. The shelf below that had a collection of fake IDs, passports and driver's licenses from different states, all with the same man's photo, but not Brandon's, under different names. My heart was pounding. This was bigger than I thought. But the most important thing was on the bottom shelf. It was a simple black ledger, a notebook. Deeks picked it up, handling it carefully with gloved hands. He opened it. It was full of handwritten entries, dates, names, dollar amounts. Deeks flicked a glance at the IDs. Bagman, he said. Whoever owned that unit held the aliases, the cash, and Brandon's paper trail. My eyes scanned the page. I saw a name. B. Cole. Next, to it were dates and payment amounts. Then I saw descriptions for the payments. Pool repair, drainage maintenance, clubhouse roof. These were all HOA projects, big-ticket items. And then I saw the truth. The amounts in the ledger paid out to B. Cole were the exact amounts that were missing from the HOA's budget. The money Karen Moore was supposed to be managing. It was all there, a detailed record of their entire scam. Deeks looked at me, his face grim. Mr. Carter, he said, I think you just blew this whole thing wide open. The safe wasn't my secret anymore. It was their tomb, and we had just opened the door. Sergeant Deeks and his team took the contents of the safe as evidence. They photographed everything, bagged it, and logged it. With Deeks okay, I snapped high-res photos of the ledger and contents before they sealed the evidence bags, the cash, the fake IDs, and most importantly, the ledger. As they were packing up, Deeks pulled me aside. Listen to me, Ben, he said, his voice low. This is a criminal investigation now, a serious one. We're talking embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy. Karen Moore and Brandon Cole are the primary suspects. But they don't know that we have this yet. They just know they failed to get into your safe. They're going to be desperate. What do you think they'll do? I asked. I think they're going to get stupid. Deke said they're cornered. Don't engage with them. Don't talk to them. If they so much as look at your house funny, you call me directly. My card has my cell number. He was right. A cornered animal is the most dangerous. I spent the rest of the day like a level bubble dead center, calm with a storm on both sides. The air was calm, but I knew the storm was all around me. I tried to work on a small project, sanding a piece of maple for a cabinet door, but I couldn't focus. Every car that drove by, I looked up. Every noise, I tensed. The next morning, the hammer dropped. I was in my kitchen when I saw it. A big flatbed tow truck, the kind used for hauling. Heavy equipment was backing into my driveway. A man in a dirty work shirt got out along with a guy operating a huge industrial forklift. They weren't police. They weren't friendly. I walked out my front door and stood on the porch. "Can I help you?" I called out. The driver, a burly guy with a clipboard, walked towards me. He didn't make eye contact. "We're here to remove an unapproved structure from the property," he said, gesturing towards my garage. "What structure?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The safe," he said. "We have a work order from the Meadow Ridge Homeowners Association. It's classified as a hazardous and unapproved item on the common property." "Common property?" I said, my voice dangerously calm. "This is my driveway. The safe is in my garage. It's my property. You're not touching it." The guy just shrugged. "Look, buddy, I just have a work order. It's signed by the HOA president. We're getting paid to move the safe, so if you could just step aside." He was trying to be reasonable, but he was also about to help them steal evidence in a criminal investigation. I wasn't going to let that happen. My mind raced. I could call Deeks, but by the time he got here, they could have the safe loaded up and gone. I needed to stop them right now, and I couldn't do it alone. Then I had an idea, a big yellow 10-ton idea. I pulled out my phone and called my neighbor, Paul Kim. Paul lived across the street. He was a retired contractor, a good man who had lived in Meadow Ridge for 20 years and hated what Karen Moore had done to the neighborhood. He also owned a massive backhoe that he kept parked beside his house for landscaping projects. "Paul, it's Ben Carter," I said, speaking fast. "I need a favor, a big one, right now." "What's wrong, Ben?" he asked. I could hear the concern in his voice. "Karen sent a crew with a forklift to take my safe. They're in my driveway." There was a pause. Then I heard Paul chuckle. It was a low, rumbling sound. "I'll be right there," he said. A minute later, I heard it. The deep, guttural roar of a diesel engine. Paul's backhoe came trundling out of his driveway and across the street. The truck driver and the forklift operator just stopped and stared. It's not every day you see a full-size backhoe driving through a suburban subdivision. Paul didn't say a word. He drove right up my driveway, maneuvering the huge machine with expert precision. He positioned it directly in front of my garage door, then lowered the front loader bucket until it rested, firmly on the asphalt, completely blocking the entrance. He then swung the backhoe arm around, blocking the forklift's path. He shut off the engine, and the sudden silence was deafening. Paul hopped down from the cab, wiping his hands on his jeans. He walked over to me, completely ignoring the other men. "Morning, Ben," he said, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. "Looks like you've got a bit of a parking issue here." The truck driver looked at the backhoe. He looked at his forklift. He looked at me and Paul standing there. He was a working man. He was getting paid for a job, but he wasn't getting paid enough to deal with this. He wasn't getting paid to fight a 10-ton piece of construction equipment. He let out a sigh, shook his head, and walked back to his truck. "Forget it," he yelled to the forklift operator. "We're leaving." They packed up their gear and drove away without another word. Before the truck cleared the corner, the driver's phone blared on speaker. Karen's voice came thin and furious. "You tell Mr. Carter the board has authority." Paul leaned on the backhoe's horn. It was a foghorn in a cul-de-sac. The driver winced, hung up, and mouthed, "Nope" at me. "Was that our queen?" I asked. "Sounded like a coup in yoga pants," Paul said, climbing back into the cab. "Want me to park this on guard dog moat or moat?" "Moat," I said. "Absolutely moat." Paul and I stood there watching them go. The giant yellow backhoe sat in my driveway like a loyal guard dog. Karen had tried to use force, and we had met it with bigger force. "I owe you one, Paul," I said. "You don't owe me a